Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? Let me know if you can hear me properly so I don't ramble for a good 45 minutes and then have everyone say, huh, what's he talking about? Hello, everybody. Whoa, feedback. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Google was not sure that I am who I say I am, much like many of my haters. They doubt everything, including my identity. All right, good voice. Yes, thank you, Jonathan. What is he talking about? Oh my gosh. I'm talking about China threatening to send warships to America. That's right. Everybody should run because the Chinese are coming. This is an article that I saw the other day. I didn't have time to cover it on that day, but it needs to be covered. It's a very fascinating article. So let me share it with you guys so you can see. All right, let's see here. Left monitor. Here we go. I like Nathan's hairstyle. Thank you. I actually have an afro, but I'm wearing a bald cap as usual, so as to not make you jealous of my amazing hair. So this is from the Washington Examiner, and it says, China threatens to send warships inside U.S. territorial waters. By Tom Rogan. China on Wednesday threatened to send warships into U.S. territorial waters. Wow. This is huge news. So apparently we're going to war because China is going to invade America. That's what I get so far. The Global Times called on the PLA's Navy warships to travel to U.S. military bases in the Asia-Pacific and the U.S. allies' coastlines to conduct close-in reconnaissance operations and declare freedom of navigation. What an interesting little phrase that is, freedom of navigation. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we have the Global Times, which is calling on the Navy of China to travel to U.S. bases and coastlines. The editorial added that the U.S. will definitely see the PLA show up at its doorstep in the not-too-distant future. So this is it, everybody. If you're in America, run, because the Chinese are coming. This isn't simple ranting. The Global Times operates under Central Foreign Affairs Commission Director Yang Jiechi. Its words represent a credible threat. Now, you'll notice, by the way, these periods after the links have a space before them. That's because the author couldn't figure out how to put a space, how to put a period directly after a link without including the period in the link. Pretty classic. Anyway, its words represent a credible threat. So let's go over this a little bit. So the Global Times called on the PLA Navy warships to travel to U.S. blah, 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 blah. So let's just click this little link here and see the Global Times calling for war. China won't accept, this is Global Times now, China won't accept U.S. hegemonic acts in the South China Sea. Huh, that's weird. It doesn't say, let's go attack America. It's talking about America doing something that this article hasn't mentioned yet. So if we scroll down, it starts by saying, U.S. guided missile destroyer USS Benfold trespassed in waters near the Mozi Reef in the South China Sea Wednesday without permission from China. Yada, yada, yada. The U.S. side acknowledged that it sailed within 12 nautical miles of Mozi Reef. So the reason that they're saying within 12 nautical miles is because that is actually what's called territorial waters. Here's a little image of that. So this is land. Let me make sure you can see it. This is land. You have internal waters, whatever that means, and then you have territorial sea, 12 nautical miles. What that means is that this is not part of international waters. This is not an exclusive economic zone. This is part of your country. Okay, that's what within 12 nautical miles means. That's why they're saying this very clearly, within 12 nautical miles. What they're saying is that the U.S. entered Chinese space. But it said the warship was asserting navigational rights and freedoms. It claimed that the Mozi Reef is not entitled to a territorial sea under international law. So the U.S. is saying, oh, sorry, this doesn't count as your territory because we don't recognize the Mozi Reef as part of China, essentially. And that any development China's done on the reef doesn't change that under international law. They continuously say this, under international law. It's very interesting that they say this. Because of this right here. The U.S. has not ratified the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. What this means is that every time that the U.S. goes out and does these freedom of navigation operations, what it's doing is it's saying, hey, there's a treaty out there, one that we haven't ratified, and it says that there's this freedom of navigation, so we're just going to do those operations, including entering what China considers to be its sovereign territory, and there's nothing that China can do. But since we haven't ratified that, nobody can do that to us. So this is a very crazy, one-sided diplomacy that the U.S. is doing here. It's extremely antagonistic. It's very bizarre that people could think that this is normal, that the U.S. would go across the world to enter into other countries' space and claim that it's okay because of a treaty that they're not a part of. It's bizarre. So now when we go back to this article by the Washington Examiner, that gives you a little bit of context. So why is China so furious? It asks. China laments the naked provocation of a U.S. Navy destroyer's transit on Wednesday within 12 miles. They just say miles, but it should be nautical miles. Within 12 miles of a Chinese artificial island in the China South Sea. Yang's mouthpiece, I guess they mean the Global Times, warns that only by making the U.S. have a taste of its own medicine can we touch the nerves of the U.S. and its allies and reshape the Western world. End of sentence, apparently. So they're going to reshape the Western world. Oh, no, there's more. Reshape the Western world's understanding of U.S. bullying in the South China Sea. So what China seems to be saying here isn't, oh, we hate China, so we're just going to go over, we hate America, so we're just going to go over there and pick a fight with them. What they're saying is, you keep doing this to us, what might happen if we do it to you? But let's back up a little bit. Because, again, they called on the Navy to do this. So, Global Times is saying, Navy, go do this. Let's check the wording, shall we? Here it is. If Chinese warships go to U.S. military bases in the Asia-Pacific and the U.S. allies' coastlines to conduct close-in reconnaissance operations and declare freedom of navigation, and if blah, 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 will the world's maritime order be better or more chaotic? If. They're not saying do it. They're saying if that happened, would the world's maritime order be better or more chaotic? They're saying, if that happened, would it be a better place? That's what they said. And this says, oh no, they're calling on the PLA to do that, which is totally, completely, irresponsibly dishonest. So then it goes on to say, this assessment bears little relation to reality. China's claim of ownership over the South China Sea are both geographically absurd and potentially imperialist, politically imperialist. So I've read this other article. It's short. I don't want to get sidetracked into who is, who has the more valid claims to various islands and regions. I can do that in another video because it's kind of a deeper subject. But there's a couple of things to notice. When it says geographically absurd, their argument there is that the south part of the South China Sea is far from China mainland. And this is a country that, by the way, has territories way further from the U.S. mainland than China has from its mainland, right? For example, the tail end of Alaska and that kind of thing. So the geographically absurd makes no sense. Politically imperialist is also ridiculous, considering what they're defending is the United States going across the world to put pressure on and antagonize another country, when that's not what China's doing at all. They're just saying, if we did that, what would the world look like? Now, there's a lot to talk about with the debates and the disputes about the islands, but it's not imperialist if you're saying, no, this is our property. Imperialism is when you say, this is your property, but we're going to take it. That's a very different concept. Anyway, instead, China is escalating its militarization of the sea for two distinctly unjustified reasons. First, to make these waters safe for unilateral Chinese communist resource extraction. I don't know what communism has anything to do with this, but they just throw that word in there. Second, to extract political concessions from other nations in return for their access to the sea. China's leverage is the $3.5 to $4 trillion in annual trade flows that move through the South China Sea. So they're saying that China wants the resources, and they want to be able to get diplomatic exchange for people to for other countries to be able to use those paths, which is totally normal considering that they view the entire area as part of their sovereign nation. So yeah, they want to use that. I mean, we can sit here and debate all day if it's theirs or whose view on this island or that island, whatever. That's aside the point. The point is, this has nothing to do with the U.S. other than this part where they're saying, oh, they might get a lot of money from that, and that's not good. The Trump and Biden administrators have rightly, imagine writing something for a alleged newspaper and being allowed to say rightly. The Trump and Biden administrators have rightly resisted China's actions with U.S. naval actions. Huh? The Trump and Biden administrations have rightly resisted China's actions with U.S. naval actions such as that on Wednesday. This is a horrible sentence. They recognize China's threat to trade, sovereign government, and a key principle of the post-Second World War U.S.-led international order, free transit. So the U.S. recognizes that China's a threat to trade somehow, even though the U.S. is the one that started this trade war, but somehow this is China's fault. They're also a threat to sovereign government. That's right. The U.S. is essentially soft invading other countries because those countries are in danger of invading the U.S. What? What are you talking about? And they're also a threat to a key principle of the post-Second World War U.S.-led international order, which is free transit. Part of the treaty that the U.S. didn't ratify. Okay, so they believe in this so much that they're not a part of it. But when it suits them, suddenly it's just the most important thing ever. But we won't sign it into actual recognized law. But while America's European allies have been unwilling to conduct the U.S.-style transits that so upset China, nations such as Australia, India, Japan, and Vietnam are moving closer to the U.S. position. I don't know based on what. Some of those countries have done similar things in the past, like 10 years ago, but I don't know why, I don't know based on what that they're moving closer to that position. China thus senses it may face a more robust multilateral challenge. Okay, so brief word on these countries. Australia is totally irrelevant on the geopolitical stage. It's just literally a clone of whatever America wants to do. So I don't think that there's any chance of repairing their relationship, China and Australia's, anytime soon. They'll just pretty much do whatever the U.S. wants to do. India's a tough one because of the land border disputes and some historical animosity. So I don't think that there's a lot of quick work that could be done there. Japan, I don't think that there's any chance that Japan and China will become best friends anytime soon, especially with the attitude that Japan has towards its past attempts at conquering China and all the brutality involved and how they dismiss it and deny it and don't release papers on it and that kind of stuff. I think that really makes things a lot more difficult to move forward with. Vietnam, on the other hand, this is one thing that really, scrolling back a little bit about somebody saying, Nathan, can you admit your biases? Yeah, I am very biased. I want the world to get along. I look at Vietnam, and here's a criticism of China for you guys. Ready? Hope you're recording this and telling all your little hater friends so that they know that I just criticized China. Ready? I think they could do a much better job at trying to bring Vietnam and China, the two nations, closer together. There's things, when I look back in more modern history in the 1900s, 1970s specifically, I think that China did things that probably made sense at the time, but in retrospect, probably weren't the right actions to do. And I think that Vietnam and China should be getting along better than they currently are. And I think at least 50% of that, maybe even more, is due to China's attitude towards Vietnam and political roadblocks in between their negotiations. I think China should put more effort into getting along better with Vietnam. There you go. I hope you recorded that, everybody. So the language Beijing has employed here of conducting freedom of navigation activities off U.S. military bases in the Asia-Pacific and U.S. allies' coastlines is clearly intended. Wait, I know what you're going to say here. It's clearly intended to invoke the idea that the U.S. has been doing freedom of navigation operations and activities this entire time, which is probably illegal. And if it isn't, it's definitely provocative and dangerous. That's what you're going to say, right? Oh, no, it's clearly intended as a threat to send PLA warships within 12 miles, nautical miles, guy, not miles, nautical miles, to send PLA warships within 12 nautical miles of Guam, Australia, and Japan. Okay. And then it says, while the Philippines is a U.S. treaty ally, its president has made himself into a human pet for Xi Jinping. What kind of sentence is this? That is crazy. Who wrote this? Tom Rogan. Let's take a look at this author before we finish this up and see who Tom Rogan is. So here's the most authoritative source on anything in the world, obviously, Wikipedia. Tom Rogan. This is the guy who wrote it. See, you can see he joined the Washington Examiner in 2017. This part's interesting. He called for Ukrainians to blow up a bridge and use bombs with U.S. support. And then basically he was accused of terrorism, to which he basically just scoffed and released another article and said, Russia's a big threat against journalists. Oh, that's crazy. So, I don't know much about this guy, but if you're even accused of being a terrorist, that's probably not a good sign. And if you look up this article of him calling for violence, it's still there. They didn't even remove it. And it's on, you guessed it, the Washington Examiner. The title, Ukraine should blow up Putin's Crimea bridge. How is this allowed? How is this guy not in jail? This is crazy. So anyway, that explains a lot. So regardless, U.S. Navy transits of international waters are one thing. PLA transits within 12 nautical miles of sovereign U.S. or allied coast would be a very different matter. These two sentences combined essentially form the modern imperialist attitude. You couldn't explain it better than these two sentences. Regardless, which is a great word to start a sentence with. Who cares about all that? The U.S. transits of what it has just randomly decided are international waters, according to a treaty that it's not a part of. That's one thing. But China doing the exact same thing would be a very different matter. Why? What about China or Chinese people is so different than America and American people that them doing the exact same thing would be significantly worse? Is there something worse about Chinese people? Tom Rogan? Is there something worse about these people than Americans? I'm not really understanding why them doing the same thing would be a very different matter. So here he explains. Put another way, where the U.S. is walking through a public park, China claims a right to seize public parks and then engage in home invasions. This is so insane. No, Tom. Tom, right? Yeah, Tom. No, Tom. Put another way, this would be like if the U.S. came to China and said, oh, this area is now a public park, and China said, what are you talking about? And then year after year, decade after decade, they continued to do this with their allies again and again and again. And then China opined saying, what would the world be like if we did that to you? And then you wrote a piece saying, China's threatening us. We gotta run. They're coming. That's what it would be like, Tom. The reality is clear. By its intent and international law, any Chinese incursion, as threatened, would constitute an act of provocation bordering on war. Wow, America, that would really piss you off if Chinese warships started coming into your sovereign area, your sovereign land, your sovereign seas, and saying, well, we don't recognize this as part of your country. Wow, that would be like a war, wouldn't it? Huh, interesting. Well, thank God the U.S. doesn't do that in South China Sea, right? Because that would be warlike activity. And that might piss off Chinese people, don't you think? This is insane. And then it just says randomly, China has no justification to blur the waters. No, they have a justification. It's the justification that you just laid out, which is that this would be a provocation bordering on war, including if you did it to those people which you apparently view as so inferior to yourself, called Chinese people. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say he's racist because that word is so overplayed, but this is clearly in the vein of at least that China, the country, doesn't deserve the same rights as America, which is at the very least imperialist and based on the concept of forced inequality, which is imperialism and fascism. So there you have it. This is one of the craziest articles I've ever seen. And the reason I saw this, by the way, is because it just showed up in the Google News feed. It's not like I'm seeking this crap out. I just saw the title, China threatens to send warships inside U.S. territorial waters. And I thought to myself, damn, that doesn't sound like China. And then I clicked it and I went, oh, no, it isn't China. That's you just saying that they did that. It's crazy to me. So if you're paying attention to the news, if you get your news from Washington Examiner, you're probably not watching this because you're hiding in a bunker somewhere, stockpiling food and wearing a gas mask, expecting World War III. But if you hear from your neighbors about this video, I hope that you can see just a minute of it so that you can realize, no, they didn't threaten that. They didn't threaten to do the thing that America's been doing for decades. Don't worry. America, at least for now, will continue to be a majorly aggressive player on the world stage. So you're safe, okay? Those big, scary Chinese people aren't going to come get you just yet. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. But Nathan, what about Panama? What about Panama? I don't understand that super chat. That was a great success by us. Noriega was a threat to America somehow, and that meant that we needed to violate the international laws and attack Panama. I assume that we're all in support of that, right? kills me. It absolutely kills me. All right, that's it, guys. Anything else you want to talk about, let me know. Otherwise, I shall let you off the hook. It's been about 30 minutes or so, right? Got $1.47 in chat revenue. Appreciate that. After all, I'm doing all this for the $1.47, so I can now retire. The canal, Nathan. The canal. Yeah, that's American. It's all American, okay? Australia is just a military outpost. In a way. In a way. If China invades, I'm on their side. If China invades America, I would be on America's side. Got to be honest with you guys. You can't be invading other countries. When is the next episode of Epic China? I have been working on that for a few days. Again. It will be probably next week. It's been filmed for a long time. I've just been so burnt out. So probably next week I'll release Epic China, episode 5. Do you consider yourself a communist? No, I'm not a communist or a socialist at all. All right, anything else? Any other super chats? Any haters want to accuse me of something else? Thanks for your awesome work, brother. Thank you, Jorge. I appreciate it. It's something I can't stop doing. Like, every time I want to stop doing these videos, I just read one of these articles and I go, I cannot just let this article sit here like this. It's so crazy to me that they can just say these things. And China can't fight back because if the Global Times calls out Washington Examiner, then everyone just goes, oh, yeah, those state media, right? And if the left calls out Washington Examiner, then they just go, oh, that's just left versus right crap. It's like, it's not about left versus right. They're just literally lying about the contents of the article. Thank you, Amy. Amy, woo! All right, everybody. I'm out of here. Cheers. Have yourselves a good week. I'll probably do a live stream again in a few days. And, yeah. Shanghai says hello with its crazy weather and typhoons, hurricanes, and one day it's so hot that you're just drenched in sweat, and the next day it's totally fine. It's really bizarre down here, guys. Thank you, Chen, for the €5 and the high five from yellow to red. Cheers, Idle Cloud Sky. Bye, everybody. Have a good rest of week. I will be with you again shortly. Hope you're enjoying these shorter streams. If so, comment, all that stuff, subscribe, whatever, all blah, blah, blah. Cheers, everybody. Bye.